Hi there. I'm just going to give everybody a couple minutes to come on because I know there's a little bit of a delay and everybody is probably getting logged on. So we will start in just a couple minutes. Um, Tell me where you are viewing from. I am in Ohio and it is quite cold here. I'm staying all bundled up with a nice blanket here. And we are expecting lots of snow, ice, rain, all sorts of delightful things over the next week or so. So I'm curious where others are coming from as well. Um, Also, we've got Texas. Oh, Texas, so jealous. That sounds lovely. Um, there's also going to be there should be a little poll question that pops up. So if you want to try to respond to that poll question, we'll be talking more about that in this conversation today. But I would love to see people's opinions already and what they think. And there'll be another one as well a little later. I'm just looking. Awesome. So that poll asks about blood sugar balance. Blood sugar balance impacts heart health, true or false? So take a look at that. I'm going to give everybody one more minute to get in here and then we'll get started. Um, Philadelphia. Okay, Philadelphia, you're probably getting some of the cold that we're getting. So we're in it together. And as we're going through the talk today, if you do have questions, comments, feel free to add them to that chat. I'll be keeping an eye on those, and we will be answering questions at the end of our chat today. So definitely add any questions you have, anything that comes up as we're talking about this topic today, and I will do my absolute best to get to everything. Okay, so it's been a couple minutes, so let's get started. And as people are coming in, I'll continue to remind this will be available as a recording after the fact. So if you come in late or if you have to leave early, don't worry, you'll have access to this again later. My name's Aubrey Phelps. I'm a registered functional dietitian and certified trainer, and I'm also a mom to four myself. And I just love being an expert here at Dario to help support your health, well-being, all those things through nutrition and lifestyle changes. For those who aren't familiar with Dario Connect, which was formerly Twill Care, it's an app and website where you can connect with other people, share your experiences, and get expert advice from experts like myself. We have a lot of other healthcare experts as well. And so after the session, if you haven't joined, I really encourage you to join that supportive community. And if I can't answer questions here at the event, make sure to post them in the community as well, and I can definitely get to them there. Just as a reminder, this event is meant to be a helpful resource, but it is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. So today, February is American Heart Month, and my goal is to kind of give you some tricks and tips to make some shifts in your diet that can support your overall health, but really, especially that heart health piece. So to start, I want to review some cardio health terms and major players. I don't want to go into a full biology lesson by any means, but I think it can be important to understand this terminology a little bit better, both so that you can understand your own lipid labs, those labs that would look at some of your cholesterol levels, your triglycerides, things that can be indicative of the status of your heart health. And also, just as we're going through this conversation today, hopefully making sure that you have a better understanding of what I am talking about as well. So with that in mind, triglycerides are a type of fat in the blood, while LDL and HDL are both forms of cholesterol transport. I know we often think of those, or you've heard of those referred to as LDL and HDL are both cholesterol. That's oversimplifying. They're actually cholesterol transporters. So LDL is generally considered the bad form, but it's the one that brings cholesterol to the tissues and then can deposit that cholesterol throughout the body, arteries, and then could lead to those plaque buildups in your arteries that we're often concerned about. while that HDL is considered the good form because it scavenges the cholesterol the LDL drops off and helps pick that up. Too much fat or cholesterol circulating in the blood can create inflammation, and then that is what can build up on the wall of your arteries and kind of restrict blood flow and create those fatty deposits in organs, etc. So now that we've laid a little bit of that groundwork, we're going to talk about some heart healthy diet principles. Although, actually, before I jump into that, I do want to, this is an analogy that I came up with that has been really helpful for some clients. So I wanted to share it with all of you as well. So again, thinking of that HDL, LDL relationship, what I like to think of it as, imagine LDL as kind of like chickens going about your bloodstream, depositing little eggs of cholesterol all throughout your body. And we need that cholesterol. We're going to talk about that. But cholesterol is very, very necessary and vital for health. And too little cholesterol is just as problematic as too much. So there is a kind of Goldilocks principle somewhere in the middle there. So if you imagine those chickens going around laying their little eggs all over the place, and then you imagine the HDL as the farmer going around picking up those eggs, okay? So the problem becomes when those chickens are way out laying, the farmer's collecting. So that's when those eggs kind of get deposited too frequently in too many places. There isn't enough HDL, there aren't enough farmers to collect those eggs. When we have a good balance, when there are enough farmers to pick up a good amount of those cholesterol eggs, so to speak, that is when we kind of strike the right balance of getting the cholesterol to the organs and the tissues that need them without kind of going overboard and having rotten eggs all over the place. So that's kind of an analogy to think about, which I think is sometimes helpful because, again, we think about that HDL and LDL as cholesterol themselves, but they're really transporters of cholesterol. And that's why that HDL is protective, because it helps transport the cholesterol, the excess cholesterol that we don't need, back to where it can be processed and excreted or utilized by the body in a different way. So speaking of that Goldilocks principle, generally speaking, we want not too much, not too little, with a focus on variety of plants and some good sources of protein and healthy fats. That's the general basis for good nutrition overall, but especially for heart health. Heart health really needs to focus on reducing inflammation. That means keeping blood sugars balanced. So as our poll asked, does blood sugar impact heart health? The answer is yes, absolutely. Because that blood sugar, if blood sugar is out of control or really high, it creates increased inflammation, and increased inflammation negatively impacts heart health. So that's absolutely accurate. And we'll talk more about that. So sorry about that. So what that means is we really want to focus on keeping those blood sugars balanced while focusing on some anti-inflammatory fats and lots of antioxidants. When blood sugars are elevated, especially chronically, so over a long period of time, this creates increased inflammation and stresses the whole system. Processed carbs like cookies, cake, French fries don't just increase blood sugars, but have also been linked to increased triglycerides, elevated LDL, so too many chickens, and low HDL, not enough farmers. In other words, that high blood sugar and those high carbs tend to worsen heart health lab markers. And similarly, inflammatory oils also worsen LDL levels and HDL levels, which can create those atherogenic plaques. So those plaques that build up on the arteries, and so they make your artery go from this to this because it's just being clogged up. And that's going to make it really difficult to get that blood going through the blood vessels properly, and create those blockages that you might have, as well as that increased blood pressure. Because if you're restricting that flow, your body has to push that much harder to get the blood through it. On the flip side, balanced blood sugar levels and anti-inflammatory fats are going to help keep the LDL and triglyceride levels in a healthy range and also increase that HDL. So that's actually heart protective, a heart protective lipoprotein. Antioxidants also support happy hearts as they work to kind of reduce inflammation and help the body stay balanced while providing a ton of nutrients. Okay, that was a lot of information. So let's think about how this actually looks in practice. So first, I really like clients to emphasize color. You've probably heard that phrase, eat the rainbow. They're not talking about Lucky Charms. We really want to eat a lots of fruits and vegetables. The more, the merrier. And interestingly, I find this is one of the hardest ones for a lot of people. I often suggest having vegetables for every single meal. And this can be hard if you're trying to prep something fresh every single meal. So think about giving yourself a variety of options. So, for instance, you might chop up a mix of veggies and roast them all together on a couple of trays over the weekend, and then just have those in a Pyrex or some other container in the fridge ready to go. You can eat them cold, you can heat them back up, but you can just kind of scoop them out and toss them with your eggs, whatever you want to do, and you can have a different mix of those veggies every week. The other thing to think about is kind of those fresh fruits and veggies, which can be pre-cut or portioned to make them easier to grab, especially if this is new to you. If you're really kind of new to the meal prep game, new to the meal planning game, just new to that idea of making things at home or having these things on hand, I like to reduce the obstacles to the goal as much as possible. So if the goal is to eat more fruits and vegetables, making them as accessible as possible is the best place to start, right? Because you might have the best intention of eating a nice bell pepper for lunch, but if you only have a couple of minutes in the morning to rush out the door with your lunch for work, having a whole bell pepper and being like, oh, shoot, this isn't cut, that's going to prevent you. That's an obstacle to preventing you from easily accessing these vegetables or these fruits. So think about, for example, getting a really good mixed veggie tray from the store and then having that in your fridge, because that's going to allow you to then grab a handful of carrots or grab a handful of broccoli, or maybe you grab a few things and just throw them in a baggie and walk out the door, right? Really reducing, making it easy to make the better choice. So that's something that I think can make a really huge difference and improve that ability to increase those fruits and vegetables. Same for fruits, having them pre-cut so that you don't just have this giant cantaloupe that sits on your counter and goes bad because you never got around to cutting it, but having it pre-cut, getting a fruit tray, right? Those are things that can make it easier to just grab and go, or throw it on top of your yogurt, or throw some extra things on your salad, whatever that looks like. Speaking of, salad kits are a great option. Instead of having to prep each of those ingredients, cut up your lettuce or shred your carrots, etc. Getting some of those kits so that you've got them ready to go, or getting those pre-cut vegetables, pre-cut shredded cabbage to make a salad or a slaw, or to throw on a sheet pan and roast. Those again, reduce the effort involved to getting that vegetable or that fruit from the fridge to your meal, to your plate, to your body. The other thing to think about is making sure that you have other forms on hand, right? So fresh ones easily can go bad, and that can be really frustrating, a waste of money, all of those things. So having some frozen ones. We always have some sort of frozen vegetable on hand as well as fruit. Especially if you're new to this, it can be hard to know how much to buy, right? I'll give you an example. The other night I made some roasted veggies with this grilled, not grilled cheese as in the sandwich, but this cheese that can be grilled. And so it roasts up really nicely with the veggies. And I made it with the intention of having leftovers. But my children ate far more of it than I expected, and we had no leftovers. My point being that even as a seasoned vegetable eater and meal prepper, I underestimated how much we needed. And so that meant that later this week, we didn't have the vegetables I thought we were going to have, but we have frozen ones. So I was able to still get some from the freezer. I still have them available. Even though it wasn't the ones I had originally planned, I had like a backup option. Frozen options are super nutrient dense. Sometimes they're even more nutrient dense because those products are often harvested at kind of peak ripeness versus the fruits and vegetables that are taken to the store to be bought fresh. Those are often going to be picked a little bit on the early side so that they can survive transportation. Whereas those frozen or even canned fruits and vegetables are going to be picked at like peak ripeness and then frozen in that state. So those are an excellent option, whether you add them to smoothies or eat them frozen as they are, or if you are going to warm them up and add them to some oatmeal or on top of a yogurt bowl or into a veggie tray. Fruits and vegetables play a number of roles in overall health and heart health. But first and foremost, they provide a great source of fiber. Fiber is important for that blood sugar balance we talked about, but it also supports a healthy microbiome and can also trap some of the excess cholesterol in the intestines and make sure it's excreted to reduce that overall amount of cholesterol in the body. Additionally, the bright hues of fruits and vegetables are a product of their antioxidant content. Antioxidants like vitamin A, C, E, compounds like lycopene and selenium all work to fight off this natural inflammatory process that the body is going through called oxidation. Oxidation is happening all the time. That's just part of our cells aging, our body aging, us fighting against our environment, toxins, etc. So these antioxidants help our body fight that off and reduce the wear and tear on our system. So this oxidation actually increases inflammation and cellular damage, which can lead to disease and poor function if it's out of balance with kind of that recovery piece. So in other words, eating that rainbow really helps to protect the body from that wear and tear of those natural processes. The other thing I talked about or mentioned was protein. And protein, think of like a mix of plant-based proteins and high-quality animal-based options that are nutrient dense. Beans and lentils are wonderful options. They have a ton of fiber and they offer protein. I love keeping a can or two of those in the pantry so that I always have some ready to go. You can also get dried and then prepare them yourselves. It's a less expensive option, but does take a little more time and planning. Fish and seafood are really great protein options, especially because they provide omega-3 fatty acids, which are an anti-inflammatory sort of fat, which we'll talk more about in just a moment when we talk about fats specifically. So a good way to think about it can be just starting by adding in less processed proteins for those more processed. So for instance, instead of a breaded fish, maybe we do like a salmon or a cod fillet. Instead of frying your chicken, maybe we grill it. These are really simple, small swaps that can support a more heart healthy diet. Just like fruits and vegetables, we ideally want to include protein in every single meal. For a lot of people, a lot of my clients especially, that's a big change. That's not something that they are used to doing or something that they are practiced in doing. And so it can take a big commitment and a refocus and kind of a lot of thought and intentionality to begin with. But once you start getting into that rhythm, it does get a lot easier to just kind of think about building that plate around protein. So for many clients, we start with kind of a you're about to build a meal, you're meal planning, or you're going to the pantry or the fridge, and your question to yourself is, what's my protein? So get that squared away first on your plate. And then, okay, what's my color? Add those veggies, those fruits. So that's kind of the basis for our plates, is that protein and that really good antioxidant, fiber-rich veggies and fruits. Those two things are going to help support that blood sugar balance and are going to be really nutrient dense. So your body's going to get a lot of vitamins and minerals in a small quantity if you're focusing primarily on these really good protein and fruit and vegetable sources. To start, I suggest kind of just assessing, like just kind of be more mindful about your day and kind of just start by assessing, is there a protein of any quantity on my plate, in my meal, in my snack? If not, what could you add to the plate to remedy that? So for example, if you are having an apple for a snack, that's going to spike blood sugar just because there's all it offers is carbs. So could you add some cheese? Could you add some almonds? Could you add some walnuts? What sort of, or a beef jerky stick, what could you add that would balance that out, that would provide some protein to help balance those blood sugar levels? So that's kind of the first thing I think about is not about eliminating or avoiding, but instead asking yourself, what can I add? How can I balance this plate? As I mentioned, those protein helps to stabilize those blood sugar levels, and it can be a great source of some of those antioxidants we discussed above, like copper, selenium, vitamin A, zinc, all of those things. Before I jump into our final kind of top category, fats, I know there was another little poll that popped up here, and I'm just looking to see what the results are. So eating cholesterol-rich foods increases your cholesterol levels. True or false? If you haven't voted, I would love to have you vote. Right now we're at 50-50. So I'm curious to see whether some more votes can come in and see what you guys think. I'm going to get back to it in just a moment, but I want to start by talking about how important fat is for our overall health. I think sometimes fat gets a really bad rap, but fat is actually essential to hormone health. It's absolutely something we want in the diet, but the type definitely matters. Trans fats, hydrogenated oils, fried foods, processed foods all increase that risk of heart disease. But anti-inflammatory fats and oils like from fish and nuts and seeds can actually improve your heart health. Omega-3 fatty acids like from fish and seafood and some nuts and seeds is actually an anti-inflammatory oil, which means it actively helps to reduce inflammation in the body. So that's something that, trying to swap out avocado oil for as a cooking oil and swapping processed dressings for like an olive oil and a really fun flavored vinegar, or thinking about instead of croutons on your salad, trying some crunchy mung beans or pumpkin seeds. So you're still getting that good crunch you're looking for, but you get some health benefits too. Looking back to that cholesterol question, I have a few more votes that came in. I'm loving this because it came in at 50-50, which I really enjoy. So eating cholesterol-rich foods increases your cholesterol levels. The simplistic answer is that is false. We used to think that was true, and more literature is showing that that's just not the case. There are rare instances where individuals have genetic predispositions where they are cholesterol sensitive, similar to how we do have some research that shows there are some individuals that are salt sensitive, so that their blood pressure will actually increase with increased salt in the diet. But by and large, that is not the majority of the population. For the majority of the population, when you eat eggs or another great source of cholesterol, your body just makes less. So eating cholesterol, dietary cholesterol is in most cases, and remember, this is not diagnostic. I am not making a recommendation against what your doctor has said. I am simply informing that what the literature shows is that with rare exception, eating cholesterol does not increase your cholesterol levels. Now, eating lots of processed carbs and having unregulated blood sugar levels absolutely does impact your cholesterol levels. So that's something that I think is really important to understand, is that a lot of these cholesterol levels do increase in relationship to blood sugar balance. There was actually a great study out of like Harvard University was talking about it recently about how you can absolutely eat eggs, even every day, yolk too. So that's something that if you have been avoiding a lot of those foods, eggs, shrimp is one I hear a lot. other forms of fish or seafood, et cetera, out of fear of the cholesterol in it. Um, in most cases, unnecessary to avoid, and you may actually be missing out on really good nutrient sources. Eggs, for example, are an amazing source of protein as well as a ton of vitamins and minerals, but the majority of those vitamins and minerals are in the yolk. So if you're just eating egg whites, you're actually missing out on some of the bulk important nutrients that an egg could have provided. So much like protein, changing the way you cook can be really helpful with fats as well. Think about baking or grilling instead of frying, using fresh herbs and spices instead of like a cream sauce, and choosing grilled or non sauced options when eating out. Reducing fried food is a great way to work towards reducing inflammatory oils in the diet. If you're looking to really challenge yourself, try including more fish and seafood in your diet. These are really potent sources of omega-3 fatty acids and are great for supporting reduced inflammation and heart health. And much like the fruits and vegetables, for protein and fat options too, don't miss out on some of those shelf stable options. Again, we keep canned chicken in our pantry all the time, and we will use that to toss into pastas or to make like a chicken salad. And we also keep canned salmon and canned tuna. So those are great to have on hand and make it much easier to have a good protein source that doesn't require any cooking and that is shelf stable. So those are both really great options. I know sometimes too, a lot of clients get overwhelmed by the cost of things like fish. Me too. Canned fish can be a much less expensive option. I can tell you too that my kids and I were at the Dollar Tree dollar store not too long ago, and they actually have these wonderful little packets of like pre-seasoned tuna in all sorts of different flavor combinations. And again, that's like $1. So that's a really easy lunch if you're grabbing kind of a tuna packet, and then maybe you take some carrot sticks with that, and maybe even an apple. And now you've got a really nice balanced lunch that's got that fiber, it's got the fruits and vegetables, and it's got a really good protein and fat source. Um, I see someone mentioned too air frying. And yes, air frying can be a great swap too if that's something that's available to you. That is not a kitchen gadget that I have, so I am really bad at remembering that one. But that's definitely a great option. Anything that will reduce the frying and the kind of the amount of excess oil you have to use to cook that food. Um, so now I want to talk a little bit about, I want to answer any questions that you have. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about kind of the biggest questions I see in a lot of cases. So if you have questions, please, please, please post them. I want to answer them here in the last few minutes of our talk today. But I also want to kind of address a couple of questions that come up pretty frequently. So for example, I hear from a lot of clients kind of, that they eat out a lot and they feel kind of overwhelmed by still being able to eat out because they're not ready to make everything from home, or that's just not convenient for them, but also wanting to eat better. So one of my favorite examples is Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is a restaurant that we really enjoy when we do some sort of like fast food or takeout. But the way that I kind of balance that out so that I can still do the Chick-fil-A, but I feel like I'm still eating well. I will do like their grilled nuggets, which again, so we've removed the breading, so we've reduced those carbs, and they're not going to be fried because they're grilled. So now again, we're getting protein, but we're not getting as many carbs. Or refined carbs. And then I pair that with their kale salad, which I'm not kidding is so good. So I'll get their kale salad with their chicken, those grilled nuggets, and then I'll get like a small waffle fry because obviously you have to have the waffle fries when you're at Chick-fil-A. But I now have a really balanced meal. I have this really nice fiber source, this antioxidant source from that kale salad. And then I have my protein from my grilled chicken. And then I also have just a little bit of carb on the side that I can enjoy that kind of goes with it too. So I've built my plate around what I need, what my body needs to be healthy and have what it needs to function well, and what I want. Those fries, those taste delicious. I really want those. So that's a great example of kind of how to balance out a plate and think around that. Um, Similarly, if you're going out to another restaurant, another example is Five Guys. That's one. I don't know if everybody has a Five Guys. It's a burger place. But when I do Five Guys, I will do their like a double burger patty, but I do it as a lettuce wrap. So it is all the toppings I want wrapped up in this big, like almost lettuce burrito. And then I have some fries on the side. So I want my carbs to come from those fries. And so I choose those as my carbs rather than the bun as well. And then I put a ton of veggies on that. It's got lettuce, it's got the bell peppers, it's got mushrooms, it's got onions, it's got tomato, it's got pickles, it's got all of these veggies. So I have essentially built a really protein and veggie rich meal, but it's still a burger takeout. So those are some examples of how you can kind of make swaps even when you're doing takeout. A question came in about heart health and salt. So I think this one is an area where I'll be honest, my professional opinion is that we don't know enough. What we've seen is that there hasn't been an improvement in overall heart health statistics with this push for reduced sodium in the diet. We also know that salt's actually very important. Your body absolutely needs sodium. So it's kind of this balancing act. And it's hard because oftentimes studies that have looked at salt intake in correlation with blood pressure, heart health, etc., often aren't controlling for what types of foods are being eaten. So for example, there is a huge difference between me making homemade meals with lots of fiber and lots of vegetables that I salt to taste and enjoy and put salt on my food. I have no idea how much salt I get versus a fast food burger that has a ton of carbs, a ton of processed oils, and no fiber, right? So when we're comparing those two things, it's difficult to say whether the damage done with increased heart risk or increased blood pressure is due to the salt specifically, or whether it's due to what the salt is coming with, if that makes sense. So this is one of those things that I don't think we have enough research. We thought we did, and now more and more research is showing that like this, despite the fact that Americans have actually decreased their salt intake based on the most recent surveys and studies, we're actually not seeing improvement in heart health. So there is a question as to whether that's actually making a difference. What I usually recommend is that we really do want to focus on getting our salt from homemade foods that we salt to taste. So trying to avoid a lot of pre-made fast food, salted for you foods, because those foods are far more likely to have excess salt and decreased nutrients. So that's really focusing on building that plate around these whole foods, these real foods, these foods that don't have a lot of additives to them, but not eating them bland. So definitely salt to taste, enjoying a little bit of salt there. And again, this also depends on your genetics because some people are salt sensitive. And if you are a salt sensitive individual, then yes, that can impact things. But by and large, if your diet is made up of primarily fresh foods or foods that are at home, foods that you are salting to taste, seasoning on your own, the sodium in your diet is not likely to be a huge problem. And I don't typically see people needing to strictly avoid. That issue comes in more when you're having a lot of processed foods, because one of the ways that we preserve our foods is through added salt that helps to preserve. And so if you're getting a lot of takeout, a lot of freezer meals, those are more likely to have a higher sodium content simply as part of the preservation method. So we have reached the end of our chat today. If you came in late, just as a reminder, the recording will be up and available, and you can definitely join over at the Dario community if you have extra questions, other things that come up, or want other recommendations. I am so glad you guys could all join me today. But just by being here, you've already taken that first step to really improving your heart health. And keep in mind that changes are really hard. Start small, take it one change at a time. Perhaps you start by adding in one veggie daily or increasing the color on your plate to twice a day. Or maybe you swap the fried chicken for baked. These small swaps really do add up to big benefits over time because consistency is what matters. We also had one of our Dario experts, Petra, had a live event about goal setting. So if you need some help figuring out where to start, I know we're going to link that in the comments here. So check that out as well. That's a great resource to help figure out your next step and how to make actionable goals. And if you need any more support, ideas, just want to connect with other people on this same journey, definitely check out that Dario Connect, where you can get all of that free guidance. And there's tons of recipes and suggestions and other people going through the exact same kind of transformations and goal setting as you probably are. Thanks again for joining us, and happy Heart Month. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.